They do this every single election cycle. Every single election cycle, when it gets down to the nitty gritty, here you have the politicians coming around black people to try in order to get or try to win their vote. And it really doesn't matter what side that it comes from, because it really comes from both sides. In case y'all forgot, Ramen Noodles did the same thing when he was running. In case y'all are unaware at that same vein, yes, Ramen Noodles went to a black barbershop in Chicago, the same Chicago they love to talk about when they try to bring up black on black crime all the damn time whenever they feel it's convenient. He did the same exact thing. And now here you have Joe Biden doing it, but you know he had to make a stop in Charleston at that church where Dylan Roof murdered 9 black people back in 2015. And he was interrupted, or they were interrupted by those individuals out there talking about a ceasefire. Now you have him going to a black barbershop here in South Carolina again to try to go and get black votes, but not just any black vote, the black male vote. You know, the same black male vote that they've been neglecting for so long. And, you know, they always like to cater to black women a lot and whatnot, but they always put black men on the back burner. They do it every election, and it doesn't even matter what type of election it is. It could be a presidential election or even a lower tier one. Look at what Stacey Abrams tried to do back, what was it, 2 years ago? And she ended up losing because black men were hip to her game. I'm gonna need black men to be hip to his game as well. Any of them, to be quite honest. If y'all also remember when I did my live stream about Tim Scott a little while ago, Donald Trump installed him of all people to be the surrogate to try to galvanize black people to be or to vote for him. Of all people, Tim Scott. Again, who's listening to Tim Scott? Tim Scott don't be around black people like that or at all. I mean, we've seen the company he keeps, and it's definitely not us. Like I said, this is exactly why I am staying neutral. I am staying right down the middle, independent. You can't get me from either side. Now, I'm not going to tell people which way to sway when it comes to that. I can only tell you where I'm at with it. And it seems like every time I have to bring that up, it's always instances where I could pick on both sides why neither side is good for us. Now, I'm going to read this article coming from Politico that was posted January 27, 2024. President Joe Biden on Saturday returned to the state that sparked his 2020 comeback, where he's all but certain to win the first sanctioned Democratic primary next week. Biden headlined the South Carolina Democratic Party's First in the Nation celebration dinner, delivering an amped up message to black voters, a key part of the state's Democratic coalition and constituency vital to Biden's success in November. Biden leaned into what his administrations have accomplished for black Americans by highlighting his choice to elevate South Carolina to the first in the nation slot. He also dug into former President Donald Trump, ramping up his attacks on the heavy favorite for the GOP nomination. I'm still trying to figure out what exactly did he do specifically for us. Remember, his VP Kamala Harris said that she wasn't going to do anything specifically for black people, and he basically said it in the same vein. And as we can see, they have not done for us. They've done stuff for Ukraine, and they've done stuff for the south of the Bordarians, and still are doing. All we demanded was tangibles / reparations, an anti-black hate crime bill, and for them to remove qualified immunity. That is all. All these other groups can come over here, or some of them aren't even here, and can get handouts hand over fist, and they don't require a demand a thing, and didn't even vote. That's the crazy part. They're doing all this stuff for the south of the Bordarian and the not so secret invasionists, and they haven't voted in one election, but they're allowed to just come over here and just nest wherever they can plant themselves at. Yet we've been here since the inception, and we get treated like 5th class citizens. And they have the nerve to say, vote for me, vote for us. And that's for both sides, because they all have a hand in it. I'm not of the vein of, oh, one side is worse than the other. They're equally yoked, and it's not a good thing. The truth is, I wouldn't be here without the Democratic voters of South Carolina, and that is a fact, Biden said. Notice he said Democratic voters. He didn't say black Democratic voters. Context clues, y'all. You're the reason I am president. You're the reason Kamala Harris is a historic vice president. And you're the reason Donald Trump is a defeated former president. You're the reason Donald Trump is a loser. And you're the reason we're going to win and beat him again. His trip to the Palmetto State was one of several treks he and the vice president have made to the state this month, as the president, aides, and allies view the February primary as an important moment to demonstrate his support among black voters and to beat back critics concerned about Biden's standing with the key bloc. The president ran through a list of policy accomplishments from record unemployment to prescription drug savings, drawing a sharp contrast between him and his predecessor. Biden repeatedly touted a promise made and a promise kept as the vocal, mostly older crowd joined in a call and response with the president. A fiery Biden quipped that Trump is a little confused these days, referring to the former president's mixing up Nimrata Randhawa and Nancy Pelosi in a speech earlier this month. Well, Biden, there's a lot of hiccups that you've given, even ones when you're trying to go up the stairs. I mean, we've seen that footage. So to be honest, both of y'all are screwing up in more ways than one. And his voice grew angry as he talked about Trump's past comments about veterans. As commander-in-chief, I look at veterans completely differently than Donald Trump. Then how come there's a lot of homeless vets out here on the street that don't have a shelter to be in, but you made room for all of the south of the Bordarians to get into these shelters? And some of these places ain't even shelters. They made them into makeshift shelters, like literally in New York. I talked about this. They literally forced kids in public schools to go home and do remote learning, like this was back in 2020 during the pandemic, while they made room for the south of the Bordarian kids to lay their head there and have shelter. I just talked about how in Denver they just allowed like 3,000 kids who are not from here to go to school. Like they just enrolled them. So rethink that. Think before you speak. Think about this, especially here in South Carolina, a proud military state. Donald Trump, when he was commander-in-chief, refused to visit a U.S. cemetery outside of Paris for fallen American soldiers and referred to those heroes and I quote, suckers and losers, Biden said. He actually said that. He said that. How dare he say that? How dare you talk about my son like that? Look, I call them patriots and heroes. The only loser I see is Donald Trump. A few protesters interrupted Biden's speech, with two people calling for a ceasefire in Gaza and criticizing Biden's Israel policy as 4 more years chant drowned out their demands. Another urged the president to declare a climate emergency. Representative Dean Phillips, who was also at the event, didn't participate in the call in response, but stood to clap for Biden as the crowd gave the president a standing ovation. Phillips received a cold reception during his speech, in which he asked Biden to pass the torch and warned of the risk of Trump winning in November. He also had to repeatedly ask attendees to listen while they walked around the room and talked during his remarks, another sign he was deep in Biden territory. Before the dinner, Representative Jimmy Clyburn, the fish fry man, accompanied Biden as the president made his first stop at Regal Lounge Barbershop in downtown Columbia, taking selfies and shaking hands with customers. After the press was ushered out, one attendee told Politico that Biden thanked them for their past support and asking for their support going forward and reminding folks of some of the work he's done for black voters and what he's trying to do. I want to know, the people that was there, did y'all ask about tangibles or reparations? I bet you if you did, it probably couldn't get him out of that barbershop fast enough. But I can tell just by looking at this picture, all they saw was an opportunity to shake this man's hand, smile, and take a picture, ask some low-level surface questions, and keep it moving. They did not have anyone grassroots in there asking questions. I know they didn't, because this story would have read another way if it had come to that. Biden's visit to the state is the latest example of his re-election campaign ramping up after a slow start that underwhelmed many Democrats. South Carolina Democrat operative Antoine Seawright, who was at Biden's event on Saturday, said, "South Carolina, we appreciate Retail Joe. That's the Joe Biden we know. Him coming by a barbershop in South Carolina, the black man's sanctuary, was a sign that he knows the importance of high tech and high touch." Well, first off, I never knew it to be called the black man's sanctuary, but I have grown up heard it being called the black man's country club. And country club and sanctuary are two different things. Campaign aides have reiterated that the purpose of the South Carolina visits is twofold: ramping up support for Biden in advance of the primary while also trying to make good on a promise to cement the state's first in the nation primary status. The president was very serious when he said he wanted to make sure that the Democratic primary spoke to the full diversity of the Democratic and making sure that the base of the party, black voters, had a say in the early stage of the process, said a senior Biden campaign official who was granted anonymity to speak freely about internal thinking. In addition to the string of visits, the Biden campaign moved early to announce on the ground aides in South Carolina before other general election battlegrounds had permanent staffing. Surrogates have swung through the state in recent weeks while the campaign has poured six figures into paid advertising, including on television and black radio stations. While recent polls have shown Biden underperforming among black voters compared with his 2020 results, his advisors are hopeful these early investments will send a message that the campaign is prioritizing their support and that it can help dissolve Dems' concerns about sagging enthusiasm. Well, why don't you ask the people why do you think why the support is so low? Oh, I know why they won't ask, because they don't want to hear. It's an answer they don't want to hear. They know if they ask the people why they don't support them anymore, they're going to hear something from them they don't want to hear. They're scared to ask them. They are probably in fear of black people backing away from them and asking them why they're backing away, because it's an answer they're going to receive that they do not want to hear. And most likely they've been listening to us. They may not come out right and say, I've been listening to you and you've given me a lot of thought when it comes to this election cycle, but that's fine. The fact of the matter is you've been listening. We know mainstream media have been listening because we've heard some of our talking points come through them a few times, and we know where it came from at its foundation. February 3rd is your primary, the first in the nation, Biden said, as he wrapped his speech, organize, mobilize, vote. Let's remember who we are. And that is the entirety of the article. Listen. Him going to that barbershop, that's nothing new. All these politicians, as I call them, tend to do that. And they love to do it at the last minute. I'm telling you, they're going to really ramp it up towards the closer the election gets to, like right around that October range. And literally October, a month before the election, that's when they're really going to hammer it out. They're going to really go in to try to get black people to support them. It's like, where was all this support leading up to this? When we made demands, you just pretty much slammed the door in our faces. And by we, I'm talking about the people who are the supporters. Again, I have no allegiance to either side. None. Because I see the faults on both sides of the spectrum when it comes to black people, specifically black Americans. Both sides have taken us for granted. Both sides only want either one of us for their nefarious reasons and not to actually give us what we demand and what we are owed. Both sides are some tricksters, and both sides say a bunch of BS and hot air to whoever would want to listen to it. And you look at both sides and think to yourself, would we really want to be associated with it? Like, look at the people that they have as far as black people installed on both sides. Like, really examine it. Would you want to be attached to that? Because they always say you basically are an extension of the group. Would you really want to be a part of that? Again, think about it. You have people like Roland Martin, who is stumping hard for Biden, and that people over there. You just got Donald Trump to install Tim Scott to basically be the surrogate for him. Remember, we don't mesh well with either one of those guys. Neither one of them speaks to us. As a matter of fact, one speaks at us and one doesn't talk to us at all. This probably is going to make Tim Scott feel uncomfortable, because this is probably the most black people he's going to have to talk to at a given time, because we know who he's used to being around. We know who he's used to talking to, and it ain't us. When it comes to people like Roland Martin, he's used to talking at us and trying to talk down on us like we're petulant children that don't or have not figured out life, like we're not grown adults. Last I checked, when you turn 18 legally, you're considered an adult, and last time I also checked, when you turn 18, you are able to vote. So why are you talking to us like we're children? Why would I listen to you? So again, while this article I read was focused solely on Biden and him doing the trick of going to a black barbershop and saying, trying to get that last minute support, especially in his primary, which is all he's really going to do. And then he's going to leave it alone, and he's going to go on his way to go to talk to the people he really wants to talk to, as in the people he's helped install bills for, like the Asian community, giving extra security and rights to the academy, and of course the South of the Bordarians, because that's where his focus is not on us. That's pretty much it. That is all he's going to do. And unfortunately, there are going to be some black people that's going to fall for it. But like I said, why this article was focused solely on him and what's going on here, it can be applied to both sides. All you got to do is switch the parties.